Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Sterling and Fortinet's joint webinar on eRate. I'm Mindy Schweitzer, the Director of Marketing at Sterling, and I'll be your host this afternoon. First off, I want to thank all of you for making the decision to invest your valuable time to listen to our eRate expert, Jeff Jennings. In this webinar, he's going to talk about how to build and sustain a secure hybrid learning network that offers flexibility to pivot if needed, utilizing eRate, the CARES Act, and HEROES funding. Now, we know you've been on a roller coaster ride this year, zigging and zagging, going up and down and side to side. So today, we hope to smooth out your ride. We want to provide some clarity and some assurance during this wild and crazy time. It's our goal to answer all of your questions today, so please enter them in the Q&A section of your WebEx screen, and I will get those queued up for Jeff. For those of you not familiar with Sterling, Sterling has over 20 years of experience working as a value-added reseller and solution provider to education, state and local government, commercial and federal government sectors. We specialize in K-12 solutions and are strategically aligned with Fortinet to be your one-stop shop partner for all your networking needs. Now I'm happy to introduce Jeff Jennings. Jeff is Fortinet's National SLED Practice Expert. He has over 25 years of experience working with K-12 education, higher education, and state and local government. Jeff has dedicated the past 22 years to gaining expertise in the FCC eRate program, as well as other federal programs. He loves to share his knowledge with organizations just like yours that might need help navigating these complex programs. Jeff's extensive experience has allowed him to consult with more than 250 schools, and today he's here to educate all of us on how to build and sustain secure hybrid learning networks with eRate. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending today. Right off the top, this has been a year like no other. It's been the biggest hyper pivot that's ever happened in education in modern history, and so you're in the middle of that, especially the teachers, all the stakeholders, but especially EdTech, IT, the people keeping the network up, because the network, the hybrid and long distance learning network, remote learning network, is now the central nervous system, the brain, and the heart. Without that and keeping that up and running and secure, your children are not going to be able to, students are not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to get the ADA to keep your schools funded, and that all falls on you. And that brings me to mind The Man in the Arena by President Teddy Roosevelt in a speech he gave in 1910 in Paris, France, called The Citizens of the Republic. And it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while doing greatly. So his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And that's you. That's exactly where you are today. So thank you, because you're doing something nobody has ever done before. So don't give up. There is help coming. You are so key to making education run worldwide right now with the hybrid network. And this is the example of what the average classroom is looking like today. Two children with their tablets doing their schoolwork, mom or dad working from home, trying to help them the best they can and still do their 5 Zoom meetings and do all their reports and all the other voodoo they do to keep their household running and have the income coming in. So this is far different than what we've ever seen before. And we knew in the spring, and these are some of the reports and quotes, American schools will look radically different as they reopen. And we are right in the middle of reopening. Some have already opened. Some have had to push them back around the nation. Many have had to push it back. But you're all starting in the roughest school startup ever. So you're doing a great job. And if anybody has any criticism or says, hey, this is not going smoothly, you're right. It's never been done before. You have no best practices. You have no gurus that can show you how to get it done right. So whatever you're doing, it's right. And if rather than errors, there's learning situations. And so we assess, we adapt, and we move on. And that's what you're facing today. And you're doing a great job. And the fact that we are even to go from the old normal drill and kill, which is how school was taught since the 1600s until February of 2020, and then now had to pivot to the new normal with remote and hybrid, everything being completely digital with remote learning in the classroom. And I talk with teachers in ed tech and curriculum and IT every day. And there's a lot of tears. There's a lot of tears and frustration, and that's okay. Perfection is not required, just effort. So the fact that you were able to move this quick and take the whole institution of education and hyper pivot in a matter of a couple months to what was going to be a 10-year program to get everybody online, and you've done it in 3 months, great job. Thank you. But what you're facing also, and this was updated as of yesterday, there's been 958 known successful attacks on K-12 in the U.S. In February, it was a little over 750. In March, it had hit 800. And during the pandemic and the closure, it's now 958, 38 new successful attacks in 25 days. And we know that's going to rise. It rose 7 from Friday because schools are reopening and you've now got a much broader attack surface. So not only are you dealing with the helter-skelter of trying to get school started, you're now dealing with a broader attack surface and cyber thugs and, I don't want to say any bad words, cyber scumbags who are trying to get at your network and your people at the same time. So you're having to juggle so many balls, it's crazy. One of the things that I'm very thankful for education is the COVID-19 stimulus, also known as the CARES Act. We're going to talk about that today. $2.2 trillion, $150 billion to states and localities to respond. But really, what I'm very appreciative of is the $14 billion that was set aside to education. And of that, $13.25 billion is flowing down into the education agencies, the LEAs, as we speak, through the ESEA, the Elementary Secondary Education Act. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. And if you're on the IT side, very few of you have ever had to deal with working with that funding. And it's absolutely crucial that you deal with that funding in the upcoming HERO and HEALS Act. And it's something you never had to deal with before. And what we're going to push you today is advocacy. Stand up and be your advocate, because without you, school doesn't happen. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. But as we discussed briefly, it's a whole new pedagogy for education. Distance learning is not the same as brick and mortar drill and kill from the front of the class. So you've got that whole dynamic, and you've got the dynamic of sustaining that and the remote learning. And your network has never been hit with the amount of traffic and the amount of requests that are going to be sent through that network out to the World Wide Web and out to the cloud and everywhere else that you're going. So you've had to pivot quickly, as we talked about. And so you're going to still have to pivot quickly, because we've got schools that, depending on their angle in each state and county, they want to open with the students on campus. And yet at a moment's notice, COVID spike goes up and everybody's got to go remote. So flexibility is going to be key in building out your network, not only now, but in the near term, fixing your immediate solutions, and then fixing your near term solutions, and then long term. And really, we want to advocate that you use your brand new eRate budgets for your long term solutions and work with your administration using CARES Act and the upcoming HEROES Act. And how that money is flowing, and it's already down at the state level. It flew from the Department of Ed. It really didn't start flowing till this summer. It goes to the state education agencies, the Cs, and then either through application or just formula flowing, the state education agencies have been flowing it down to local education agencies. The one caveat is if you don't have any Title I funding, 95% of the schools in America do, then you didn't get any of this funding, which I think is a travesty. But if you did, it's based on your Title I elementary, secondary education funding. And so it's roughly 78 to 85% of what their annual funding will be. But $13.229 billion is what is being flowed down. There's been a little bit being reserved at the state education agencies because they're going to have to work with you to account for all that going forward. And a lot of this you don't deal with. It's your business administration side that does. But you definitely need to be talking to them and finding out what percentage yours is going to be, because the education, the COVID Act allows the funding to be spent in 12 areas. 2 of the 12 areas are highlighted here, providing resources necessary to address the needs of individual schools, including online learning. So that's one of the 12. The second, for purchasing education technology for students, including one-to-one devices and internet connectivity. And that includes the network, all the way from the child's device in their hand out to the web and to the cloud. So they're giving you wide latitude, which eRate does not do, to purchase whatever you need to get the students up and running. But the administration is the one who holds the purse strings. And if you haven't met with them, we encourage you to talk to them right away, because absolutely every school's IT department needs to be getting this, at least a portion of this funding. And it's quite a bit you're going to see. And here's the other things that they can spend it on, but really a big part of why they did the CARES Act was to get online and remote learning up and running and supported. So you absolutely should be at the front of the line. And when I'm talking about funding, these are what was sent down to each state. So Georgia, $457 million. You can see District of Columbia got $42 million, California, $1.6, Texas, $1.2, and you can see them all there. And also the U.S. territories did as well. So the money has been flowing. It's there. And if their administration is not talking to you about it, let us know. By the way, Sterling, who's one of our most favored partners and one of the best in K-12, has the tables and the estimates for every school in the U.S. that they can send to you if you don't know what your district was projected to receive on that funding. So they can definitely get you this information and help you with that. So, but that's just a drop in the bucket, because what else is happening is right now the House and the Senate are in a fist fight over the next COVID relief. We've heard about it from the stimulus checks and from unemployment, but a big chunk of money is going to be based and sent to education. So you can see under the CARES Act, K-12, 13.2, higher ed, $14 billion. 7 of that was for student resources and 7 was for the institution itself. The HEROES or HEALS Act, depending on however the compromise goes, we're looking at somewhere between 58 million to 100 million. The 175 billion, I'm sorry, that's with a B. 175 billion that you see from the Senate not going to pass, to be frank. And the 400 billion that the Democrats wanted is not going to pass. The compromise is going to be, and we're talking with lobbyists and different Senate offices every week, is going to run somewhere between 50 billion to 100 billion. So 3 to 5 times what your school got in CARES Act is what's going to be coming down in the HEROES Act. And there's 2 different approaches they're taking. A skinny bill that would happen as soon as early October, or they do the full bill around election time. Sometime between now and the election, they're going to get this passed. So these monies are going to be coming down before your eRate dollars ever would see the light of day. Absolutely, you need to be standing in front of the line. It can go to everything that we saw earlier, but you're the key to making education happen. Again, if the network is not able to function and the kids don't get online, your average daily attendance does not get recorded and the school district loses money. And if the school loses money, the state takes over and nobody wants that. So you are key to making all this happen. And I want you to know, we see that, we understand that without you, the rest doesn't happen. So Your administration needs to do the same. And by the way, Sterling will get on calls or meetings with your administration with you to give you support. We will absolutely back Sterling up on that as well. And we've been very successful in making sure that IT departments and ed tech departments get their share of the funding they need to make this happen. So if you're not getting any of this funding at all, let Sterling know. We'll set up a call and we'll directly talk about your specific needs and issues, and we'll make that happen. But please be aware of CARES is here now. Heroes/HEALS Act, HEALS, is going to be what's coming between now and the election. So now that I made that painfully clear, so one of the things that also you may not be aware of additional funding is when you had to all quit teaching in March, you had leftover budgets at the district. What the Department of Ed allowed, which they've never done before, is to take the leftover Title I through Title V funding, so special education, English as second language, high poverty, whatever the balance of those titles were, they allowed a pivot to be able to use that towards your distance learning and remote learning hybrid network. So normally that money, if not used, would have been sent back to the feds on the last day of June. They extended that out. So that's another conversation to have with your district. Any leftover funds from Title I through Title V, just call it the ESEA funds, can be used for the network as well. And they did extend the deadline, I believe, until October in most states rather than the end of June. But we can get more specific with you when you meet with Sterling. So another big thing that you may or may not be aware of is in March, the FCC waived the gift rule for one specific purpose, and that was to give you the opportunity to get POC demos, frankly, production equipment plugged into your network to get your kids up and running, to get your employees up and running, and to keep it until September 30th. This was allowed in March. And basically, you would not get in trouble for plugging in whatever you need to keep your network up and running, and then have till September 30th to either use like CARES money or whatever money you were wanting to use, or unplug it at September 30th. Now, in the waiver, and we can send you the actual waiver language, it's long and boring, but it's important. They also allowed for an extension if so needed. We, as well as most manufacturers, but more importantly, the state education agencies, the affinity groups across the nation, Education Superhighway, Funds for Learning, COSN, ISTE, all the others with alphabet names have all submitted a request and a waiver for the FCC to extend that. And its formal request is to June, because we all know that what we'd hoped would end over the summer is Groundhog Day every day. So we're going to be facing this situation at least through the holidays, if not in the spring. So that's the request. And on a recent call with Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's office and with a bunch of lobbyists and with a bunch of the Fed people, they really feel it's a 95 to 98% chance that that deadline for the end of this month will be extended out. And so if that's the case, that allows you to not have to worry about going through the formal process. You can get whatever Fortinet solution you need and use that to get plugged in and up and running. And one of the things we're seeing is as everybody opens up school, the network that you've built out has never really been built out to handle 100% digital and the increases in traffic in packets. So those IP packets have now exponentially increased, and we're seeing very rough times during school startup because it's never, ever happened before. So what we're doing on the fly and what Sterling's doing on the fly is getting you, for example, the FortiGates that are upsized to the right size or replacing whatever firewalls or gateways you have, getting those plugged in, and they can do it. For us, why we're so popular, by the way, we're the number one, not only with network equipment, we're the number one firewall in K-12. And Sterling puts in a lot in the K-12. So it's got built-in VPN and it's got built-in SD-WAN and split tunneling. So those have been requested left and right. And I've got 11 calls total today dealing with K-12 that are doing exactly that. They're having to upsize to meet the demand. So if you're having that issue, Sterling, absolutely make that call, because you don't have to pay for it right now. You can see if it's going to fit and if it's going to be the fix, and if it exceeds expectations, you're going to be able to work with your administration between CARES, HEROES Act, and long-term eRate to make that fix. So don't just rely on your eRate funding, and there's a reason why that I'll talk about in a minute. But take advantage right now of just whatever the biggest headache and pain you have, getting it fixed and getting it turned on. At least it'll get you through to September 30th, but honestly, we all believe it's going to be extended. The FCC put in that extension possibility just for this case. And if they don't approve it, I think people are going to grab pitchforks and stampede the best deal, because without this, you're stopped. So you have the ability to do that. We'll send you the official information from the FCC on this, and anything else you need. Sterling has all this ability to get that out to you. And again, they will work with you in the administration to make that happen. And when I talk about what's available for you through the funding, this is not eRate. With eRate, it's access point switches, routers, wireless controllers, the APs, cabling, and caching. The problem with caching is now that you've got total one-to-one and every request is a unique request, caching is very ineffective because you've got so many unique requests going out to the World Wide Web. So with that, you've got the eRate capabilities. By the way, you have until September 4th to give comments to the FCC on what you want to see added to the eligible services list. We have submitted, as well as several others, and they're all asking for advanced firewalls, network security, network management, the key things that have not been changed since 1997. In 2021, absolutely needs to be changed. So that's what we're pushing for. We'll know by early fall what that's going to be. But if you do want to make comments, the FCC has that, and Sterling can send you the links on that. But with CARES, HEROES, and to a percentage and to some ability, you can, everything you see here is the network solutions. Also, what we're seeing a huge demand for, because of teachers unions and teachers, rightfully so, not wanting to use their cell phones and their home phones because of exposing their own personal information and also cost, and not having the district have to buy cell phones for everybody. We're seeing a huge uptick in the use of our portable voice Fortiphones. We have soft phones that can be put out onto the teacher's devices that acts as a phone, and it just shows a district number. That has made everybody happy, and the education unions are much happier about that. So if you've got an issue with that, you can actually plug and play that as part of this FCC waiver as well, and then use CARES or HEROES money to pay for it. But in a very, very straight and orderly way are the solutions that are available to be covered under CARES Act in a much more helter-skelter way, but it actually will make sense. What the areas that are going to impact you right away is, if you look over to the left, the Fortinet token and the EDR, the endpoint security for your devices is crucial, because SEPA and FERPA are not going away, and you're going to be held accountable for it starting right now. So it kind of was let go by the side in the spring because everybody was scrambling, but you're still going to definitely need to have that endpoint security. And also with the rapid increase in attacks, you've got to have something on those end user devices, both for filtering, but also for security. So you can spend funds from HEROES and CARES on that, on the remote workers that you have back at home that aren't able to go back to the DO or the campus offices. Again, on your security gateway, that's key. You can spend it on that. Everything you see here is important. And where we're seeing a big uptick is on the security gateway, the FortiGate or the firewall. But since you've exponentially increased the number of devices on your network, because it's everything that's the device in every person's hand on your site or remotely. And if they are back on site, plus whatever's in their pocket, backpack, or purse. So you've seen the number of devices exponentially increase and hammer your network. So what we're recommending is use CARES and HEROES to get all these key areas that aren't covered that you can see here. We're seeing a lot of need for Fortinet. And if you've got on-prem email, that's a key area because that's the number one area people are getting attacked and hacked, is their on-prem email not being sufficiently secure. And then all these different areas apply. So whatever your need is, the great thing is if you get with the administration and prove that you need it, that funding can be made available to use this, and you don't have to wait a year like you do with eRate. It's your normal process for buying and purchasing. So they get the funding, you figure out what you need. If it's plug and play or whatever, you can certainly make the case that you need the funding for that, because if you unplug it, everything goes down. But for eRate, what we're recommending and what we're seeing is CARES Act for your immediate needs to get you up and running, get you functional. HEROES Act to be able to sustain that and grow it and add what you need that's not eRate eligible. And then use the eRate portion to build out your lands, because when these kids are all back and we have a normal, whatever that next normal is, you're back on campus, you've got to be able to expand not only your circuits, but your access points, switches, etc. So that's how, and this is, I believe, called 689 since March with districts. And that's by far best practice. What we've seen is how they're utilizing their funding. Get the immediate needs with CARES. You've got near and expansion efforts that you have to do to sustain this incoming traffic. Use the upcoming new funding for that, and then your long-range plans for eRate. So doing that, I think, will put you in a great place. This is the extended waiver that I was talking about. Just know that it's going on. And to cover eRate real quick, I want to be very conscious of your time. There's been a lot of changes. So the significant program changes. So you have a new Cat 2 budget, Category 2 budget, that is based on $169 and change times the number of students in your district. Just like it was before, by the way, as inflation goes up, they'll change that cap that will adjust year to year. So you can spend the funding in year one. Let's say you have $1 million and you need $750,000 of that in year one to get the network where you're running, and then use it for basic maintenance or whatever going forward. However you need to do it, just be aware that you do have that new full budget. 2020 year was the extra year, or the bonus year, eRate called it, and yet only 40% of the schools participated in Category 2. You need to take advantage of this funding. Yes, you have a match. By the way, CARES Act, HEROES Act can be used to match your funding needs for your eRate request as well. The other thing you can do with, if you're going to get support and things like that that are a year-to-year cost to your OpEx, you can use CARES and HERO up front and do like a 5-year quote and get that money paid up front using all federal money and none of your local budget money, and then it reduces the hit you have on OpEx in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. Actually, all 5 years, because the Fed's paid for it. So we're seeing that being adopted rapidly by all schools in the use of the funding. So it's the 5-year Cat 2 budgets. They're going to be reset, and budget cycles are going to be fixed. So going forward from 2021, you've got 2021 through 2025. So for eRate at this point, if they don't make any drastic changes, which they very well may, this is the budget you'll have going forward. So that's why we recommend you use as much of the CARES and HEROES Act to get everything that's not eRate eligible, and then expand your networks going forward after you get the burning fires of school startup and remote learning put out. Those are your priority right now. We're aware of that. Sterling is aware of that. That's why they've got a very, I call them a SWAT team. They're a very quick, responsive team that will jump into whatever your needs and issues are. And because we can do the plug and play, it fix the problem now, and then we'll work with you on getting it positioned and paid for long term, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a great big deal. And so having those the new budgets is great. Also, as of this point, no new eligible services have been added, but they're reviewing it, like I said. And one of the things that I want to make very clear, instead of having to read it from the slide, one of the big things you can do now is you don't have the site-based budgets. That's been the number one pain and problem and question about eRate. For the last 5 years, you've had to do site-based budgets. For 2021, that is gone. So you as the district can simply use the eRate monies under the eligible services list anywhere you need it, where it's eligible as far as the learning environments. So if you've got equipment that frankly can be moved to a pre-K, TK, whatever situation, Head Start, because it's aging out, but you can still use it, you can actually, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, move that equipment over, use the new eRate funding or CARES or whatever, and put it in where you need it in the high priority areas, the high schools, any of the learning or any of the issues at the DO that you need. So you can, one, put it where you need it, and also take the existing equipment and move it out. And if you need to forklift it, get rid of it, you can certainly do that, but you need to document that whole process, which is vital. So the new multipliers, and by the way, Sterling's going to send you this deck. So don't feel like there's going to be a test at the end of this talk. So you're going to get this information, but this information is important for your business people. I'm not going to bore you with it because frankly, it bores me too, but it gives the parameters of what the new budgets are like. So don't feel like you need to know this. Just send it to the people that have to count the beans, this section. But school districts and by the way, the library systems calculations are going to be different yet stay the same. Again, there's not the restrictions of the site-based. Same with libraries, but the school district, you're going to have, one of the things I want to point out is, let's say your district increases, because now that you've got remote learning, it's going to be much easier for people to do lateral transfers, interdistrict transfers, et cetera. So that's going to change your student counts, hopefully for the better. So you can readjust each year. If you added 250 students in year 2, then you can have that adjusted by eRate to meet that number. If you go down, I would not say you've had don't get it readjusted. You don't want to lose that money. You still have that base. But if it benefits you, go up. If it doesn't, go down. Don't go down, ignore it. So that's one piece I wanted to talk about that. Again, schools will no longer have the individual C2 budgets. Yet that's the number one issue that we're talking about. Just know that you're not, and some of your different people that you work with will say, we got to do it by site. Slap their hand and tell them, no, that no longer exists. That went the way of the dodo bird and the dinosaur. That's extinct. So you get to spend it where you need to. Again, libraries, but to have the ability to be way more adaptable with the eRate program, as far as moving and where you want to spend it, one thing you must do is document what you have, where you're moving it from, where you're moving it to. Keep detailed records. By the way, you have to keep these records if it's the same as before for 10 very long years, a decade. And will you get reviewed sometime? Yes. It's not maybe, it's yes. They added 1,200 people to the review and audit side through Maximus, through USAC. But really, if you have your records detailed and in shape, you're fine. The worst issue I ever had was to one of, I won't say which territory, but territory way out in the Pacific. And they were going to have to repay $16 million. I was the eRate consultant. We got on the islands for 8 days. One binder was missing that had all the detailed information. We went to 14 sites. We started at 5 in the morning and finally at 8 o'clock at night. We found it. It had been used to wedge up a desk that was unlevel out of a remote office in one of the farthest remote school districts. But we found it. And so out of the $16 million, really the only thing they had to pay back was $250,000 on a long distance cable connection that nobody knew they had. That was not being used. So 250,000 instead of 60 million, but they did audit, and that was very, very painful. Typically they are not. So just I can't tell you enough, record keep is find the person who is the most OCD on your team. Guess what job they get to have? The one who has the most detail that will take and own this process for you is going to be very, very important. How are we doing on time? Any?
We're doing good, Jeff, but we do have a few questions. So we're about 20 minutes. Okay. So I think you've hit on a couple of these as they've been coming in, but can we use the CARES and HEROES money for their eRate contributions?
Yes. And we recommend you do that, especially because some of your budgets, you're already seeing it, have been cut because of state budgets. So absolutely utilize that money if you need to.
Perfect. One of these, I'm going to take an answer. You've talked it a couple of times, Jeff, on Connect with Sterling. And so just real simple for any of you wondering how to get in touch with Sterling, you can simply go to our website, sterling.com, go to the contact page. You can fill that out. The marketing team will get you aligned with your sales rep. We do cover nationwide, so we can go ahead, get a call set up right away and move forward with Jeff on some of the additional questions you might have. The other way is just to email us at connect@sterling.com. And then here's another one. You said we can plug anything in and try it. Can you please clarify that?
You bet. I mean, the electric pencil sharpener, if you need it, I guess, but absolutely. So what the whole CARES Act and what HEROES and HEALS Act, whatever it ends up being, is to allow you to build out the network that will sustain remote and hybrid learning. And the reason I went back to this slide is it includes everything, like we talked about before, the voice, the phone systems for your teachers who are remote and your staff that are remote, for securing your network, which is key. You're allowed to do that. And so with the waiver, which right there. So with the waiver, it allows you to do whatever you need to do to get the equipment up and running. And then honestly, it's plug it in today, figure out through your different funding vehicles how to get it done. We recommend for the immediate needs, again, using your CARES. And then as you're growing the network, especially ineligible for eRate, plug in the pieces that you need and use HEROES Act for it as well. Because honestly, education's never had this allotment of funding in this way for IT before. And since you're one of the top two priorities in the different sides of technology, your district must use the money that way. I can't be more emphatic. Teachers unions will try to pull as much as they can away. Every department's going to have their hand out just like this, but everybody's needed, but you're the central nervous system that lets everybody continue their job. So that's why get in line, get to the front of the line. I don't care if you're proud. Get with your administration if you haven't gotten any of this funding, because they all have it as long as they've got Title I. And then use that money specifically as much, whatever your budget is. And I'm glad you brought that up because, sorry, I'm pointing fingers. I get emphatic. Sterling can help you plan this all out and not only get it plugged in, they can work with you with the budget numbers that you can take to the administration and say, of the 3.5 million, yeah, we need 865K, but this is what it's for and this is what it's going to do. And again, if you get pushback, if the network inadvertently goes down, I'm not saying do that. Let's see how fast phone calls are made because you're the lifeline. So, and they need to fund it and make sure that it's strong enough to sustain. So you can absolutely, when I mean plug anything in that's required for the business of education, plug anything in that's required for the business of education. And feel free to do it. Again, at least through September 30th, but we honestly feel it's going to get extended, and I check multiple times a day. And by the way, Sterling will provide you updates on all of this. And one of the things that we've been doing with Sterling with a lot of their school districts and some that aren't even their school districts, we're having a weekly or biweekly call with you just so you can be updated because you're too busy trying to keep everything up and running and juggling 12 fireballs at the same time. So if you want to schedule a regular cadence call of what's going on to help you with the planning going forward, Sterling's absolutely the right person to do that. I'm off my soapbox now.
Thanks, Jeff. Here's another one. Are only schools with Title I eligible for CARES money?
Yes, Title I through Title V. So that's the majority. But if they don't have I'm losing my mind. If they don't have ESEA funding, that's a problem. Now, that is going to be addressed for Heroes and Heals. So if you didn't get any funding, and again, Sterling can send you what each state is supposedly allotting to each school. And it's less than 5% that don't get it. So if you don't know, just ask Sterling. They'll send it to you, and you'll see what your neighbors are getting. And you can either be proud or you can have envy, whatever, but at least you'll know approximately what the funding's going to be.
Perfect. Now, are the requirements for the CARES and Heroes the same as eRate?
No. When you say CARES and HEALS, they have no relation to eRate. The only issues you have are between you and the state. Just like and your business administration is going to know this. You don't have to, but just be aware that it's the same review and auditing that they do for the regular Title I. There's no extra federal level of rabies shots like eRate has, and so it's much easier. Has more spending latitude, has more everything. I wish I could switch eRate for long-term CARES, but that's not going to happen. But at least it gives you the latitudes to buy the things and the services and the installation of pieces that you normally couldn't get through eRate. You need to take advantage of that.
Well, here's a compliment to you, Jeff. So it says bean counter here. This has been so enlightening. This just helped me pivot how we will address our needs. So great job. I do have one last question here in the queue. We've got, with the new eRate budgets, can we use them where needed, or what are the restrictions?
So the only restriction now is that it's got to qualify for the eRate funding. So if it's the MOT office, because it's not a learning environment or an eligible learning site, no. Any educational efforts that go on at the DO and everywhere else, yes. So you don't have the site-based issues. You can put it where it's absolutely needed. What we're seeing right now, like I said, is using CARES and everything to get the remote learning up. And then what we really recommend, if you have, let me take a step back. If you have issues with firewall for anything that you're doing right now, don't wait for eRate to get it. Use the current CARES and the Heroes. Long term, you can still do firewalls, which are eligible, but they're not 100% eligible for advanced protective services, just basic firewalls. So that's why CARES is a better choice, because it's all Fed money and none of yours. But long term with eRate, your LANs, your local area networks at all your sites are going to nobody's got the current capability to sustain the traffic that's going to hit that network when every child and every worker at each site goes back to school on site. So we recommend using, and Sterling's got great solutions for this, and they say Fortinet, that to plug in and do that with. So you can use your eRate however you need to, but you can put it in to the LANs in the areas that are most important and most critical instead of the way they did it before. And that's a long-winded term of saying you can do what you need to as long as it's eligible.
Perfect. So we have about 15 minutes left. We've gone through the questions that have come in. Do you have any final comments, Jeff, before I get to a few housekeeping items?
Yeah, so I really wanted to climb back up on the soapbox for a minute. One of the things that we really want you to, and I'm going to drive this home a fifth time, is notice the areas that are eligible under CARES and what will be under HEALS as well. Mental health services, summer learning, everything they're vitally important. None of it happens without these two at the top. And so I cannot, and back in the 1800s, I used to teach adaptive PE special ed coach and was an administrator. I had to deal with ESEA all the time. You have never had to deal and try to get that funding. They absolutely need to make sure you get that funding. You need to become an advocate, something you've never really had to do before. And again, every person's role in an education system is important, but with this pedagogy shift that overnight to online learning, and with the pivot of the delivery method to remote hybrid and online learning, where everything is done over an IP packet that's never ever happened in the history of the US or the world, the money needs to be spent. Definitely some of it needs to be spent on your networks. So whether it's a calm conversation that you have with the administration, whether it's whatever you got to do, storm the Bastille, whatever, one thing you've not been used to is chasing that funding. So we need you to chase the funding. Your students need you to chase the funding. You don't have to do it alone. Sterling and their teams are meeting with administrations, and my team that's supporting them, we're meeting with them with administrations all across the U.S. So if you want backup, if you want support, we will definitely do that. And it's not about trying to slam in a solution. That's not my job. I don't sell anything. My job is to support and advocate for education across the United States and North America. So that's our goal. So take advantage of that, because Sterling will absolutely run to your assistance and be the cavalry that you may need to talk with the administration. And since the one person that said they were a big counter, they obviously see the need, and they'll be able to advocate for you. And absolutely, we've seen fantastic cooperation between business offices and the IT department, because honestly, curriculum and everybody else is still trying to figure out how to get the teachers to address the pedagogy and how the students to stay in their seat on video. So work with your business administration side. Honestly, they're going to be your best advocate. We obviously want to do that as well. And do not be afraid to let us know. Call us. No question is too little. No issue is too small. I get a little passionate about this because I want to see you. Without you, Johnny and Joni don't get to have an education. In this new era, it's critical. So again, I'll get off the soapbox right now and hand it back over.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And just to add a little to Jeff's comment there, Sterling does have most of those solutions that Jeff showed on the one screen in demo capability. So give us a call, contact your sales rep. We can look at setting that up, getting Jeff on a call or the other Fortinet reps on the call to follow through with that. Just to echo Jeff's comment, thank you to everybody. These are trying times. We appreciate everything you guys are going through. You definitely are the men and women in the arena. So we are here to help in any way we possibly can. This is being recorded. We will send it out after the webinar is completed. In addition, we'll put the recording up on a landing page so you guys can access it or forward that on to anyone else in your districts. We really appreciate your time today. Jeff, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. We appreciate the assistance and just can't let you all know enough that we are here to help. So you're not in it alone. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We'll give you 10 more minutes back to your day. And please contact us if there's anything we can do. Thank you.